Ethiopian diaspora is the most vocal, the most influential diaspora community, in particular in the affairs of politics. Yes, politics is one thing that needs the active engagement of the diaspora community. Nevertheless, politics is not the whole thing. Today, enormous challenge of Ethiopia and Ethiopians are overlooked as we are obsessed on politics. Hello and welcome, viewers. My guest for today is a member of diaspora community, Professor Adugnaw Worku. Professor Adugnaw Worku is currently residing in the United States of America. Professor Adugnaw Worku has been known on his strong criticism on successive Ethiopian government. However, over the last 13 years, Professor Adugnaw Worku has shifted to developmental activities. Professor Adugnaw Worku is the reason for many Ethiopians to get access to water, health, education, and so on. So Professor Adugnaw Worku is here in the studio today. Please do stay with us. Professor Adugnaw Worku, big welcome to Amhara Media Corporation, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right. I think it's so important to give a highlight of how and when did you leave Ethiopia. Can you tell us this briefly, please?
I graduated from high school in 1970, Gregorian calendar. That's 1963, Ethiopian calendar. The year after, I got a scholarship to go to Australia for college education. My goal and desire was actually to go to the United States of America. My friends had gone there. Going to America was more glamorous. But Australia was not a bad alternative. The only drawback that concerned me was I did not know anybody in Australia, whereas several of my friends had gone to the United States, and I could have joined them in America. So the scholarship was for Australia, and in hindsight, I'm glad I went there.
Yes, Professor. As far as I know, you are strong critics of the successive Ethiopian governments. But when and how you started to comment on Ethiopian politics?
Haile Selassie was a reformer in his day. As a young ruler, he was a reformer. He was an active proponent of reform and so on. But as time went on, especially after the Italian occupation, he became more conservative, more absolute in his power, and more unwilling to accommodate change. He had educated a lot of young people both at home and abroad. And those same young people he single-handedly educated were now asking for reform, change, and participation in the affairs of their government. He had lived in London for 5 years during the Italian occupation, so he saw firsthand how the English system of government, constitutional monarchy, worked. He could have done that. He was advised by people inside and outside the country who were his friends and confidants to move towards reform and change to accommodate the demands of the modern times. He refused. And so as a young person and as a young student, I was part of that movement in spirit and by activity. I used to write for Adugnaw and things like that. Now, in the middle of that, I left the country. I left the country 2 years before the
downfall of
revolution. Yeah, before the downfall of the emperor. So I followed the developments through all kinds of media. I was glued to the BBC, ABC, which is the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, The Economist, I mean, you name it. I became somewhat of an expert on the current affairs that were going on. I became an actual critic of the government of the Derg when 60 high-ranking officials of the Haile Selassie regime were murdered.
Yes.
With no due process. And communism became the order of the day during the Derg, and we know what happened. It started peacefully. It was a slow process from February to September. It's dubbed as the creeping coup, the bloodless coup, and so on, but then it became bloody, very bloody. And so I got involved in that agitation. Then came ethnic federalism, which basically created enclaves of ethnic and linguistic areas, which literally segregated Ethiopians into different enclaves. And we know the results of that system. So I have been critical of that system as well. So only as a private citizen, only as a concerned individual, as an academic, not as a political organizer or political leader or anything like that. So my involvement and my criticism of the system is actually a desire to come up with a better system. A system, you know, we've tried the monarchy, we've tried communism, we've now tried ethnic federalism. Let's try democracy.
Let me bring you to your latest engagement in the area of development. I heard from the Ethiopian government and from other non-governmental organizations that you mobilized a huge resource to overcome some of the challenges of people living in rural area. And I will come to those specific activities bit by bit later in my show. But how did you abandon politics?
The turning point was 1997, Ethiopian calendar. That was the watershed for my shift. The 2005 Gregorian calendar, that was the election. Hastily organized coalition, political coalition called Qanijit, galvanized the country with very skillful debates and debaters. The government was taken off guard, but they actually let the election go through in a very remarkable and organized and peaceful manner until the results showed up. And we know what happened after that. State of emergency was declared. People who went out to demonstrate were killed. The opposition was imprisoned. You know, we know what happened. I was very actively involved during that time. I gave my time, my money, my energy, my everything.
Your everything.
I said, for the first time, this country was ready to shift to a different democratic direction. And then all hell broke loose, as they say. Now, the second event that really pushed me over the edge was the collapse of Qanijit. Qanijit as an organization had caught the imagination of the Ethiopian people, both at home and in their diaspora. But they literally disintegrated. And at that point I said, look, this political issue is not going to change anytime soon. Meanwhile, the poor people in Ethiopia, especially rural Ethiopians, are dying. They don't have schools, they don't have other services and resources. And I basically said, look, I'm not getting any younger. I am from rural Ethiopia. I grew up in rural Ethiopia until I was 15 years old. I know exactly how people live there. And I said, I need to shift gear. And democracy is a broad term, by the way.
Yes.
There is social democracy like the one that Scandinavian countries practice.
Yes.
And there are other forms of democracies.
Yeah.
We don't have to copy democracy wholesale.
Yeah.
We can customize.
Exactly.
We can customize. Yagerun sardo bagaru bari, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Indigenous knowledge is always
indigenous
important.
knowledge, yeah.
Yeah.
Ethiopian problems
Can
should
be
be solved by Ethiopian solutions, you know?
I think you have made a very important point. You know, democracy is about changing the lives of the society, isn't it? It depends on how we understand the democracy. We were successful in overthrowing different regimes in Ethiopia, but we couldn't install a democratic system. So, you know, democracy involves many things, and you are doing a very great job. I have read your poems, your literature, many things I have watched, and you are doing really fantastic, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. You built a school and also vocational and technical training center in Adugnaw Worku here in Amhara region. How did you build it, and what is the status of those schools right now?
I came to Ethiopia for the first time after 30 years. I was out of the country for 30 years, and then I came for a visit. And I went to the village where I was born. No clean water, no electricity, no road, nothing. So I said, look, I need to do something. When I left that village, I was the only one for miles that had an opportunity for education. And so I decided what changed my life was education. And what did not, the people I left behind, my cousins' children, all my childhood friends, and everyone around that area, what they did not have was education. The only difference between them and me was education. First thing I chose to do was build a school where farmers' children can attend. Now, there was an elementary school, but when they finished elementary school, almost 90% dropped out of school. They did not have the capacity to go to the city where there were the few high schools that existed to continue. So my goal was to build a high school so that students can continue until they finish high school. And after they finish high school, if they pass the required examinations, they can go to the university. Many of the graduates of our school are now in government jobs, in academics, in technology, business. They work for private business, for the government. Not everybody is cut out for academic pursuits. There are people who are good with their hands. They're mechanics, they're electricians, and so on. So we built, or we helped build a vocational and technical school. Both schools are doing very well. We started with 233 students when we opened the high school. Now there are close to 1,000 students. We have in that school, to attract good teachers and to give students a chance to compete with the rest of the students nationwide, we built a good library, science laboratories, a computer lab with the solar energy, teachers' housing, dormitories for girls who travel long distance and who drop out because of risks of travel and so on. And so our schools have been a bright light, a success story, and I'm absolutely delighted about that.
That's a successful investment, isn't it? It is your passion to see a societal change that makes a difference. There is one proverb, if I'm not mistaken, if there is a will, there is a way.
Yes.
Yeah. And
yes.
Even though you were not rich enough to support those students, because you are rich in your heart, you were able to mobilize a great resource to build a school there in Bernat Warada. Yeah.
Let me add something.
All right.
You know, the vision is absolutely essential. There is a text in the Bible, "My people are lost for lack of vision," it says. If you have a good vision, and if you are determined to fulfill your vision or your dream, there is money out there. You know, there is money.
Yeah.
There is money in the country here.
Yeah.
There are people who are willing to support a cause if, in fact, you help them catch your vision. Mahatma Gandhi said, "The amount of giving is determined by the intensity of belief." People can give their money, their time, even their life for something they believe in. If they believe in it intensely enough, they can give anything. We're doing a project next month in the Bichena area. This is a cataract surgery project. So I approached an individual in Addis Ababa.
I will come to those questions later.
So there are people with resources that can help. But you have to have the vision, the leadership, and the integrity to use the money you have received for the purpose you asked it for.
Yeah, that personality is a great resource in there. Yeah, you also give water to thousands of people in Amhara region. Tell us about that incredible water project.
First, let me give a background about how essential clean drinking water is. Water is one of the most important medium for disease transfer. It's the worst disease transfer, water is. Cholera, E. coli, typhoid, dysentery or diarrhea.
Waterborne diseases.
Waterborne diseases.
Yeah.
More waterborne diseases have killed more people around the world than all the wars in the world combined, according to one article I read.
Yeah, yeah.
4,000 children die every single day from waterborne disease.
From waterborne disease, 4,000 children die every day.
That is 1,500,000 children a year. So water is important. Next to oxygen, water is the most important element for life. For any living organism, water is important. And clean water is more important. When I was a kid, one of my chores was getting water for the family from the river. In September and October, there are streams close to home. But during the dry season, you have to travel long distance to a river. And that river is a major destination for domestic and wild animals, for people to wash their clothes and bathe. And you go and get that water, and you get all kinds of stomach aches and diseases. So, you know, I said, Water wells are a must.
One of the amazing things that you have done so far in your effort of overcoming the multifaceted problems of the rural people is to give a flour mill machine to rural villages. This is something unexpected. I mean, it's something uncommon to most of us. How did you think about that?
Basically, my mother was the motivation for this. I watched my mother get up at dawn and started grinding grains to flour for the family.
In a traditional way?
In a traditional, with stone grinders, you know, back and forth, back and forth.
That's time taking, isn't it?
It takes 10 hours for an average woman to grind dry and hard grains, you know, like say 11, 12 kilos of grain, at least 10 hours, up to 10 hours. Yeah. You can do that in less than 10 minutes with a modern flour mill. So my mother got up in the middle of the night to grind the grains, went to the river at dawn to get water, cooked for the family, and from June to December, from when you start sowing seeds and then harvesting at the end, she worked with us all day on the farm. Came home with a load of firewood, prepared supper, and then she would make the dough for the next day. By the time she went to bed, the night was half gone. So she got an average of probably 4 hours of sleep a night. So I grew up watching that. And when I got an opportunity, when I came back to Ethiopia 30 years after living overseas, I saw people doing exactly the same thing, using stone grinders. And I said, this has got to change. This has got to change in the 20th century, in the 21st century, grinding grain with a stone grinder. So I adopted that project, and we installed 26 flour mills in 26 different qabalis. Two of them are actually in the south, in the Oromia region. The foundation I worked with had a project in that area. So we installed two of them. The rest of them are in the Amhara region. And, you know, depending, the sky is the limit in this country. If you want to do development, the sky is the limit. You can do something somewhere. And in fact, at the end of our chit-chat here, I would like to send a message to Ethiopians at home and abroad as to what can be done. Now, I'm not bragging about what I have done. I want to make that clear. I was scared of it at the beginning, to be honest. But it can be done. And I want to encourage people to do something.
Something meaningful.
Something meaningful that can change one person's life, one village's life, one community's life. You know, whatever you can do.
Yeah, that's a massive achievement. You slightly touched the point in the middle of the interview, but let me ask you, in your cataract surgery project, you restored the sight of many people, didn't you? So tell us about this incredible achievement as well.
This is also a personal issue with me. When I was 15 years old, I lost my left eye. I was accidentally struck in the left eye, and I lost my sight, and I also developed a cataract, a white patch in the middle of my eye. People think that cataract is old people's disease. You know, you get old, and then you develop this disease called cataract, which covers your eye and you go blind. Accidents can also bring cataracts. So I lost my sight and I developed a cataract. So I lived with that. I have had 7 surgeries to improve my sight, which has not been successful. So this has been personal for me. So when I came for the first time, I went to my village and some of my friends had gone blind. Some of the people I knew who were older than I was had gone blind, a lot of them. And I knew it was cataract. You could see it. You could see the white patch in the middle of their eye. So I went back to the United States and I worked for 6 years, almost 7 years, to get funding for cataract surgery for the rural folks, for the farmers, basically. City people at least have access to hospitals.
At least have access, yeah.
So after almost 7 years, I found a foundation that actually worked with sight or vision restoration. And we've been getting funding, and we partnered with Gondar University, the ophthalmology department at Gondar University, the eye doctors. So every month we choose a location and we advertise and we go there and we do surgery. We've done surgery in Adugnaw Worku, surgery in Isti and Samada, surgery in Dambia, surgery in Sokota, surgery in Nafas Maucha and Gaint. We're going to do one in Bichena, in that area.
East Goja.
East Goja. So every month we go somewhere and do cataract surgery. In Sokota, we did 1,224 successful surgeries. You do the surgery today, and the next day the patch, the eye cover is taken off, and people could see. This is magic.
Yeah.
And there was a lady who was blind for 5 years or more, and her son was her guide. She knew him by his voice. Her patch was taken off, and he was standing next to her, and she said, "Who are you?" And he said,
"That's so incredible.
I'm your son." And
you have to be very proud of him.
Yeah,
yeah,
very touching.
Yeah, restoring the sight of one single person is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, so cataracts can develop early in life, like 45 years of age or 50 years of age, if a person is out in the sun all day, every day. In the United States and other developed countries, usually you are in your 60s or 70s and 80s by the time you develop cataracts. Here, especially in rural Ethiopia, you can develop it at age 45, 48, 50, and those are productive years. A farmer goes blind at 45, that's trouble for the family.
Yes.
And 2 people are out of commission, the blind and the guide.
Yes, yeah.
So this is huge. This is very impactful. And I am absolutely delighted to be part of this.
You have to be.
Yeah,
Professor, I know you did more than this. You did more than what you said. But for the interest of time, let me take you to the other important ideas. You know, millions of Ethiopians are living outside of their country, where USA, Europe, and Arab countries are their major destinations. How do you understand the potential of the Ethiopian diaspora in changing the lives of Ethiopians, in bringing meaningful change in socio-economic and political affairs of the country?
The impact of the Ethiopian diaspora is enormous.
Enormous.
Economically, technologically, academically, financially. I mean, I can go on and on. Not only the first generation like me, but our children who have been born and raised in the diaspora. Ethiopians have done a good job to educate their children to remember their ancestral land, namely Ethiopia. Many of them have come and visited Ethiopia and have left very, very happy. When my sons came to visit Ethiopia, the older one at age 13 wrote a poem entitled My Roots. He described the mountains, he described the beauty of the women, he described the pride of the people, and so on and so forth. So there can be generational engagement of the diaspora with Ethiopian affairs, economically, politically, technologically, and so on and so forth. It's been 2-3 years, but one statistic I saw said that Ethiopians send more than $4 billion to Ethiopia, to help their families, to support causes every year.
Every year.
$4 or $5 billion. That's a lot of money. Last year, or several months ago anyway, we were fundraising for displaced people in Ethiopia. In Los Angeles alone, there's a big city called Los Angeles. In one single evening, we raised $660,000 to help people who have been displaced.
In a single day?
In one single day. And over $1.5 million in a week or two in California alone. There were people who gave $20,000, $10,000, $5,000. So there are Ethiopians who are well off. Ethiopians are hardworking people in the diaspora. And a lot of Ethiopians have become successful in every sphere of life. So if this country is at peace, stable, and accommodating, I mean, what the diaspora and their children can do is very, very significant.
We are finalizing our interview, Professor. So how should the Ethiopian diaspora act in the affairs of their country? Because, in our country, we are witnessing a circumstance where Ethiopian diaspora are supporting their country willingly whenever they believe the government is doing good. And on the contrary, we are observing a situation where the Ethiopian diaspora community are reluctant, lacking appetite to engage in the affairs of the country whenever they feel the government is not doing fine. Do you think this should be the rule of the game?
Yeah, that's actually a very, very important question. The diaspora is very polarized. It's very divided because of the political situation. When people sneeze here, we catch cold in the diaspora. Unfortunate. And my message has been, let's make a distinction between politics and development, between politics and the people. So we can still do development. We may not agree with the government of the day. And there is plenty to disagree with. But the people are the ones we need to focus on. I really have a strong message to the diaspora and to people who have had the privilege of education even here in Ethiopia. We got the education we got at the expense of the poor farmers of Ethiopia. It is the taxes they paid that paid for our education. Whether we live in Europe, America, Australia, wherever, or in this country, as professionals, in academia, in business, in finance, whatever, we got our education at the expense, at the direct expense of poor Ethiopians who never had a chance to educate their own children. So we have an obligation to give back. We have an obligation to help out. You know, the political situation, I know, is a burning issue in everybody's mind. And it grabs and attracts everybody's emotion, everybody's attention, and so on. And it is true that politics sets the for any other activity. But having said that, life is multifaceted. People have to live, have to make a living, and life has to go on. So, you know, engage in politics if you want to, but don't forget to help the village that you used to live in, or the small town you used to live in, or the school you attended, or the hospital that you went for treatment. Do something.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your beautiful insights and golden ideas. I thank you very much, Professor.
My pleasure.
Dear viewers, that brings us to the end of our program. Hope you enjoyed the program as much as I did. Please do stay with the rest of our programs. See you then.